guys, it's me, Yaya Diamond. What's up? I'm so very excited to have an um an author, but a little bit differently. So, music is made out of a constant writing of poetry and rhyme and different things, but poetry itself is beautiful. And we have an author here today, and her name is Patsy. It's Miss Patsy, and I don't want to mess up her last name. That's why I did not say it because
It's
I am
Dunstan.
Dunstan. See, yeah, I would have probably messed.
Dunstan. It's strange.
Yeah, but that's okay because I'm strange. And I want to welcome you to the show, Miss Patsy. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh. So we're gonna just dive right in, okay? So
Okay.
what inspired you to write this book? Okay, so it's my interactive book of poems, right? And I
hmm
just wanted to know, how did you get that early love for poetry and for this project?
You know, I have been an educator for
Mm,
over 50 years, closer to 60.
mm-hmm.
And I have worked with children of all um, um, emotional levels, not only emotional, but educational levels. And I have found that the missing link is reading. I have taught in 3 different countries,
Mm-hmm.
including the United States. So I am able firsthand to tell the problems that parents and teachers encounter as they try to bring children to love reading.
Mm-hmm.
And another problem they have is the apathy which with children
Mm-hmm.
approach learning.
Mm-hmm.
This book of poems, my interactive book of poems, offers help in this area.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Wow.
Um, I can continue. You asked about
Yeah.
my early,
Yeah, like the early love for poetry. I mean,
right.
how did you know that you were gonna have this? I mean, I know being an educator, you're in the classroom or you're doing and you're composing different things and lesson plans and stuff, but poetry? I mean, I don't see where that love would have come in that respect. I mean,
Well,
lesson
it
plans.
it happened through my parents.
Ah.
My parents, who were not, they didn't even finish elementary school, but they had this grasp of the English language, beautiful imagery. And my mother, she was a jester.
Mm-hmm.
My father was quiet and sober and scholarly, but she would um, tell us all sorts of stories and it would make us just laugh. But
Mm,
it didn't stop there because I wanted to experience more.
mm,
So, what I did, sometimes at the expense of my chores, I would take newspaper clippings, old and new, old magazines, new magazines, cardboard paper, whatever, wherever writing appeared, you name it, I read it.
mm,
And as I grew up, I realized that words are very powerful.
yeah.
So when I became a teacher, I this was transferred, my love of words was transferred to my children.
Mm,
And I would make up, if I'm introducing a geography lesson to 10th graders, I would introduce it with a poem.
mhm,
If as I said, I taught children throughout the all grades.
mhm.
So I was exposed, fortunately, to young and old,
Nice.
and I would introduce math or whatever lesson I was doing with preschoolers. Maybe I would begin with a jingle and a rhyme, and I found that children gravitated to this form of introduction, this
Mm,
form of learning without any forcing, without any bribing, and it was successful. But
nice.
I didn't do anything about it because all the poems I wrote were impromptu.
Mm,
So to me, they were um, discarded. But
uh,
my daughter, quite young, would say to me, Mom, why don't you write a book with poems in it? I resisted and I didn't do that. So it was not until COVID when I found myself with time that I began to write poems, and I said I should share this with children, and this just came organically. The
hmm.
book, the two books,
Right. Wow.
blossomed out of this experience.
That is so cool. That is just so cool. So, okay, so an interactive element though. So you put
Mhm.
in an interactive element. Can you tell me more about that interactive element
Okay.
in your book,
Yes.
and why did you choose to include questions with each poem?
Yes.
And is that the interactive part of it?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I didn't just want to write a book of poems for children or adults or whoever read it to discard it. Most storybooks, most prose books are read and just not read again. So I
Hmm.
said, I tried to come up with the idea with something that will encourage the children
Hmm.
to become a part of the experience.
Right.
And the I came up with the answers, you know, with
Mm.
the questions, and they had to write the answers. If you
Right.
look through the book, you will see that.
Hmm.
What happened is that the answers tell us how much the person understands.
Hmm.
So the questions are crucial. So I included questions with all the poems,
Wow.
and that made it that can extend the life of the book because the child doesn't have to begin at the beginning.
Right.
The child can go begin at the end of the book because important information about poetry is also included in the book. Poet laureate, it tells us about the youth poet laureate. So a
Hmm.
child who has an interest in poetry can become a poet laureate, a
Right.
youth poet laureate. It
Mm.
is open, nobody is excluded.
Hmm. Wow. That's beautiful. I absolutely love that. And I think that a lot of people kind of downplay poetry, but poetry is the beginning
Yes.
of so many different amazing things like songs and
Poetry is
novels
beautiful.
and it's
Songs,
beautiful.
yes.
Oh yeah.
Songs, rap, all those. And I want to point out something too. Children learn poems, jingles, rhymes effortlessly.
Yeah.
We, we don't have to teach them. You will hear a young child singing a song, and you wonder where did this child get it from?
Mhm.
Not only is it repetitious, but because of the beauty of the words, they were drawn to it.
Yeah.
And that is the missing link in learning.
Mhm.
Children do not enjoy, they do not have fun doing the things. They will more gravitate to a video game, they will gravitate to doing anything else that they love, that they enjoy, that is fun. But taking up a book with all those long lines in it, a prose, they are turned off. So the
Yeah.
poetry, with its some of them, with its short lines,
Mhm.
appeals to them,
Mm.
and we can get to them to reading through poetry.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I do agree with you. I do agree with you. Your book covers various forms of poetry, though, not just like one.
Yes,
Like you got haikus, you have acrostics.
we have in the book we have shape poems,
Mm-hmm.
haiku, acrostic, rhyming poems,
Mm-hmm.
free verse, and narrative. I
Okay.
I selected them.
Mm-hmm.
You, did you want to say something before?
Yeah, I just wanted to find out why you selected them. Like, how did you go about doing that? You know, the haikus
Yes,
and everything, and just all different types of poems.
yes. Um, I selected them because this is an introductory book of poems. We don't have many books like this. This is an introductory book of poems. So I wanted to introduce them to something I think they like, something that is not too difficult, and something that they can learn something new. They can learn about something new.
Mm-hmm.
Rhyming is a common type, so quite a few children are exposed to rhyming, but haiku and shape. I'm really taken by the shape poems. The shape poems, the words create the shape of the object.
Mm-hmm.
So the child has to figure out the verse, the words of that poem. And
Mm-hmm.
in this book, they are the first group of poems are the shape poems. And at the end of that section, the shape poems are written in verse. So if a child is having difficulty figuring out the title. The shape is the title of the poem. So if a
Mm-hmm.
child is having difficulty figuring out the what the title is or what the words say in order, they go to the end of that section and it's written there in verse to help them.
Oh, nice. Oh, that is great. That is amazing. I mean, so it's fun and teachable.
Exactly.
I like that. I really do. And so does this help with like teaching your voice, teaching pitch,
Yeah.
inflection? I mean, in your acting in my interactive book of poetry,
Yeah.
it's does it help develop these skills at all?
Yes.
Because I'm a vocal
Yes.
coach, and that would be amazing for me.
Yes. The point is that poetry, I look at poetry as the how, what, and why of reading.
Right.
The pitch and the voice and the inflection
Mm-hmm.
are the how.
Gotcha.
How do we get that?
Mm-hmm.
The how do I read the poem? The voice, your
Gotcha.
voice, as the reader reads the poem,
Mm-hmm.
it translates to the head,
Right.
and that is what you understand.
I gotcha.
So, the if you change your voice, you change the not only the structure, you change the emotion that you may feel.
Mm-hmm.
And this poetry is such a rich blend of words and images that
Right.
one can help loving
Mhm.
poems.
You can't. You cannot help but love poems, you know. So, why do you think poetry is such a powerful child development tool?
It is powerful because it touches their soul, if I want to say it. Poetry is fun, and it's the fun part that is the why. Why do children like poems and they will stay engaged in the process?
Mm-hmm.
They they're having fun. Um, I'm going. A mom has a child and she wants to teach reading, and she takes up a book and she gives her, and
Mm,
the child would rather go and get video games and play with it. Why? It's fun
yeah.
and it engages the child.
Mhm.
If we go through the to reading through the door of poetry, it means that we will enter, we will go in to the child without any pain or crying or bribing,
Mhm.
because it is something that the child enjoys and the child will remain engaged in the
Yeah.
process.
Definitely, definitely. Wow, wow. So, is there something like in your childhood that encouraged you to write this book? Is there like, I mean, I'm just trying to figure it out because poetry is so in depth and it's like it's so creative. It had to have come from maybe a childhood thing that you maybe there was a lack of something.
It does, you know, my it is I wouldn't it did. My childhood experience influenced this,
Okay.
but I had no inclination to write poems. My daughter, when she was young, would say, as I mentioned earlier, Mommy, why don't you write a book of poems? Because she noticed that I love words. But I didn't. I resisted because I think it was the poems I created were just for the moment,
Mm-hmm.
depending on the mood I was in. Some if it's a playful mood, it would I would come out with something maybe funny. If I was in a pensive mood, I it maybe I'd write one of the poems in the book, bravery
Mm-hmm.
or something like that. But I didn't see myself writing books.
Oh.
As I said, my experience as a child spanned quite a few years of my parents' influence. They
Mm-hmm.
had a, they had something very special with words.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, my mother was just the funny person, and
Yeah.
my father was this, stately. And they didn't finish elementary school, but they had the imagery and the beauty of the language. They had it down pat. And
Nice.
I'll tell you an incident that when I was young, my mother went to the market and came back, and she always, when she comes back, she brings goodies for us. And she started telling us about this fisherman who was selling fish to this lady. And this lady didn't like the fish, it wasn't good. So she was there talking to us, all children gathered around her, because all we are interested in is what she brought for us. And she stepped back with a few she walked down maybe three or so paces and then turned, and she stuttered, um she stuttered these words, if you I I will never come to you again. I will never purchase your things again. It was a stutter. Yeah,
Mm.
never do this again. And we broke out in peals of laughter.
Oh my.
And we weren't laughing at the lady, but
Mm-hmm.
we were laughing at the poetic moment,
Mm-hmm.
the way she delivered the story in her own way brought us to laughter.
Mm.
And there were many other incidents. She was funny, the jester,
Mm-hmm.
but my dad would speak with such authority in his voice and very seriously with beautiful words.
Wow. That's one. Oh my gosh. Wow. Wow. Do you have a favorite section from your book, My Interactive Book of Poems? And
I,
is it meaningful to you? I mean, what does it mean?
I don't really have, and all of the sections came about from my from my mood. For that matter, this book was written in about 2 weeks because
Mm.
it just flowed.
You're kidding. Two
Yeah.
weeks.
And the other book, which is
Wow.
bigger, 300 and something pages, it too, under a month, I wrote both books. And
Mm.
I didn't plan to publish them. It wasn't my intention. It just happened.
Wow.
So I remember one day it was very windy outside, and there was a huge tree in the backyard, and the wind broke that huge tree and scattered the branches all over about 3 other yards and
Mm.
ours. And, I watched it as a child. And then I came up with this poem. Can I read it to you?
Oh yeah, definitely. Please do.
And the title of the poem is The Tree, this, this Tree, the Storm, and Me. It was daylight, but it looked like dusk or dawn. The sun was hidden, and the air was thick with gloom. I was restless. I couldn't sit still or concentrate. As I sat on my porch, the leaves began to dance. I retreated to my room and continued to observe. Then I watched, and the acrobatics began. Rain, hail, stormy winds, lightning, and thunder all at once. It happened in a flash. Snap, crack, bang, crash. Branches and leaves flew everywhere. My backyard tree, strong and stately, lay in crumpled heaps in our neighbors' yards. I was stunned and confused at the sudden loss. And as I closed my eyes that night, I wept in silence for my giant friend.
Oh my gosh. I can see how that can teach a child to speak and to be eloquent and to be, careful and also to learn. Wow. 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 So critical thinking and being a critical thinker also can be a part of this poetry. I mean, how do you feel about
Yes,
that?
yes, very much so. We have grown up, we have lost the art of thinking deeply.
Mm-hmm.
We just follow the crowd. The lost art of deep thinking can be revived through poetry. As children, examine the poem, try to figure out the figurative language and the rhymes and the structure of the poem. They begin to think deeper and
Mm-hmm.
do not just accept what is on the surface. They
Mm-hmm.
begin to think critically.
Right.
And I can quote the from William Wordsworth, who wrote, um, whose expression we sometimes copy. The child is father of the man.
Mm-hmm.
It's in a poem, My Heart Leaps Up, that William Wordsworth wrote. And if you are a reader as a child, 10 chances to 1, you're going to be a reader. You're going to love reading as you grow up and as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a critical thinker as a child, the child is father of the man. So the habits and the traits that we develop as young children, we tend to carry it forward
Mm-hmm.
into our adult life.
Yeah.
So poetry
Mm.
is key to a fulfilled life, a life where we think through things rather than accept what
Yeah.
is told to us.
Yes.
And
Yes.
as we practice that in poetry, it is translated into other areas of the child's life,
Mm-hmm.
into the other subjects, to how he interacts with his peers and to and to adults, and it makes for him a much more um, whole person, a
Mm-hmm.
person with a soul, a person who lives from within
Mm-hmm.
and not allow what we see around us to affect us so much.
Yeah.
And we will be much better citizens of our country.
You are so right. Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh yes. So what do you recommend to parents and teachers? I mean, with this workbook and creating an engaging and learning experience for our children, what do you recommend?
Okay. Um, in the workbook, I have a note. I try to make the workbook less wordy and just to give the parents. I have in the front part of the workbook, no to parents, no to teachers, no to children, and the book also tells us how we use it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in order to understand a poem, we need to read it aloud.
Mm-hmm.
As we read it, it goes, as I mentioned earlier, it goes to our ears, and we hear it in our head,
Yeah.
and then we translate it into how we feel about it. I can read a poem and you may read a poem, but each of us interpretation is different, and that's fine. It's coming from you. It's your experiences that you're bringing to the poem.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why poetry to me does not restrict a child.
Right.
It makes a child more confident and more able to function without having to get all that that child want, or as they grow up to be a copycat,
Oh, come on.
be himself,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I
not
agree.
regurgitating what somebody else says
Mm-hmm.
and take it for gospel. We see the written word, it doesn't have to be true. We need to read it and understand it,
Yeah.
go through and go to the depth of it. And the only way we go to the depth of it is our withinness, go
Mm-hmm.
to our soul and bring it forth.
Right. Wow. Wow. What's next for you as an author? I mean, do you have any new books that you're doing after this? What's coming up?
What the thing that I have another book, the same one you showed, my
Mm-hmm.
interactive alphabet in verse.
Oh, okay.
Actually, they both were published more or less at the same time,
Okay.
and that one is a little bigger. It is geared for children 3 to 5 years old, and it covers everything that the child needs to prepare for kindergarten, to
Mm,
be a good student.
this one.
Yes, that
Okay.
one.
I
My
gotcha.
interactive. So I may have to meet with you again in order to promote. This one needs to be promoted.
I gotcha.
And
I mean, we're doing that right now. We're doing that right now. So, but we can do it again and we can talk about this because I would absolutely love to have you back to talk about this book in particular. But we're definitely going to be going ahead and talking about the interactive book of poems first and make sure that people know about this because I mean, like you said, there's rhythm, there's rhyme, there's etiquette, there's tone, there's
there's
memory, there's
vivid language,
so much.
beauty in words,
Yes.
and that can hold us, that can captivate us. or
Mhm.
senses and make us lift us out of this world, as it were, because
Def
it's our consciousness
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
does it. We are
Yeah.
not bogged down by the things of that we see, by the physical senses, because
Mhm.
it's not the truth about us. We are more than what the eyes see.
Mm. Wow. And you're so right about that. You are so right about that. Wow. Well, I want to thank you, Miss Patsy, for being on the show today and for bringing your book. It's just been an amazing adventure. I want to go ahead and tell people that you can go ahead and go to Amazon and get that book or check it out for yourself. My interactive book of poems, and it's going to be up there. It's also going to be in the book club so that if you don't know where that is, and I can put it on the link in the description box below. If you're
It's
watching
also
this,
at Barnes.
Barnes and Nobles.
I'm sorry, it's also at Barnes and Noble.
That's, you
It's
know
also
what?
at Barnes and
That's
Noble.
awesome.
Read it.
That is, I love Barnes and Nobles. I went in there the other day. I got another book. So yeah, yeah, definitely. So I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in. Miss Patsy, thank you again so much for being on the show. I appreciate you
I
so much.
thank you very much. You know, you allayed my fears. I
Aw.
felt at ease with you. You are beautiful.
Thank you very much, Miss Patsy. Thank you so much. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. Don't forget to check that book out for yourself. And we will be back a little bit later on to talk about the other book that she has. And
Thank you
I'm
ever
sure that
so
it was just
much.
being a teacher so many years, she knows.
Yes.
Miss Patsy knows what needs to be taught. And if you want to teach your children or even give them that extra umph after school kind of thing, please do. Please check it out for yourselves. I want
Yes.
you
And
guys.
I
Yes, go
want to say that parents will have to put a little work into this.
ahead.
The book, they need to be supervised because it's not a busy book. It's a
Mm,
book that is supposed to be teaching a specific skill.
right.
So we don't just give it to them and say, okay, go and do page. Do it with them, read it with them,
Mm-hmm.
enjoy it with them on the floor, in the park,
Mm-hmm.
at
Yeah.
the laundromat,
Mm-hmm.
on vacation.
There you
This
go.
can be the companion book.
There you
So I thank you.
go. Oh, no problem. And thank you guys again so much for tuning in. Remember that you are your child's hero. You are. No one else.
Exactly.
You are. And it's awesome to share these moments with them. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Don't forget to dare to be different. Until next time,
Thank
guys.
you ever so much.
Thank you,
Thanks
Miss
for having
Patsy.
me.
All right.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Don't forget to follow us on YouTuber and Instagram. Thank you for watching.